gun-wielding veterans, opioid-addicted white trash, and making a last stand in a building against overwhelming odds. We're not talking about Texas. This is VFW.
Move it! Faster!
Get a move on!
Pronto.
Rapido!
Yalla!
I got time for a quickie.
First up, let me thank Fangoria for letting me watch this movie because it's not available in theaters and you can't get it on iTunes over here yet. If not for them, I would not have been able to see this movie, and I've been waiting to see this thing since it was announced a long while back. Anyway, on with the review. VFW is a 2020 grindhouse horror film directed by Joe Begos. It was written by Max Brailer and Matthew McCardle. It was shot by Mike Teston. It was cut by Josh Ethier, with music by Steve Moore. The cast is a who's who of badasses, both male and female. You've got Stephen Lang, William Sadler, Fred Williamson, Martin Cove, David Patrick Kelly, George Wendt, Tom Williamson, Sierra McCormick, Travis Hammer, Dora Madison, Josh Ethier, and more. Runtime is 92 minutes and it is unrated. So the premise is pretty simple. A group of Vietnam and Korean War veterans are chilling out at the local VFW when a girl stumbles in and is being pursued by an army of mutated punk drug addicts. So it's up to these old school hardcore veterans to defend their VFW, the girl, and to survive the night. But given their ages and condition, can they do it? One of the first things you're going to notice is the music. The music is just sick. It's synthwave and 80s metal guitar combined. It's very Carpenter-esque. It has a great horror feel. It feels kind of dirty. It feels rough. It feels hardcore, which matches the tone of the film quite well. I really enjoy the fact that it has this weird premise, but it speaks to current issues like the opioid crisis, the way that veterans are treated, how the different generations look at one another, and it shows how some of those things can be overcome with respect and cooperation. But the music isn't the only thing that reminds me of the 80s. There is no holds barred, over-the-top, gore-soaked extreme violence that just looks and sounds super tasty. And it's pulled off really well by a good stunt team and the cast themselves, who did much of their own stunt work, which is pretty cool considering some of their ages. The cast is rock solid, man. They really give their all. All the performances just feel authentic. The veterans feel like veterans. The druggies feel like druggies. And part of the authenticity of the movie is the dialogue. It feels like real conversations. Even the way that they're talking. Sometimes they talk over one another, but it's still always understandable. It's almost like some of it was improvised. And if it was, it's pretty great. And the way that these guys talk is how an old group of veterans would talk. They're very crass, they're very blunt, they say what they feel, and it comes with a lot of vulgarity, and I mean a lot of cursing, which I really enjoy. As an aging veteran myself, I definitely give the dialogue, the feel of it, the stuff that they say, my stamp of approval. The lighting is very minimal, but when there is lighting, man, it's just neon-soaked sets. Everywhere there's just really strong blacks and then pinks and blues and purples. It has a graphic novel feel, and it kind of reminds me of Creepshow or those old comics from the 60s and 70s. From start to finish, this movie is paced really well. There's never a slow moment, and when there is these moments of respite, they don't feel boring, they don't feel wasted, they don't feel like they're trying to pad the runtime out. It actually lets you get further involved with the characters and get to know them. And what's great is the first 20 minutes or so, it's all character building on the bad guy and the good guy side, which is pretty fantastic because most movies these days, they just kind of blow right through that. You really get to know the characters, you know what their motivations are, what they're about, their different personalities. So when shit hits the fan, you start to really care about what goes down with them. Even though it's a brand new movie, it feels kind of old school but new school at the same time. It's a timeless feel. It reminds me of It Follows. Now, the only indicator for me was the fact that some of these guys are Vietnam and Korean War veterans, and for that to be the case, it would have to be 80s, 90s, early 2000s, but it looks modern. I don't know when it is, but honestly, I don't really care because it just kicks ass. There's a lot of good humor in the movie. It's pretty funny. The jokes don't feel forced. They don't feel too campy or cheesy, which definitely could happen with this type of film. And most of it feels pretty natural. It's just normal parts of the conversations or certain acts of violence. They may not even have been meant to be funny, but they just come off that way, but not in the so bad that it's hilarious way. But then again, I was a paramedic, I was in the military, so I have extreme gallows humor, so I find a lot of humor in things that most people would not. Something else I really dug about this movie is the bullet count. I'm big on ballistics when I watch movies with weapons, and every single time guns are used in this movie, it's always the correct amount of bullets. Speaking of weapons, when stuff pops off in this movie, it goes super hard. and it does it in a really brutal and gory way, which I loved. And as loud and crazy as this movie can be, there are certain moments when it does get quiet. Like I said, these moments of respite. It knows when to shut up. It knows when to, turn that music down and let the dialogue be what stands out in the scene, let the characters, shine. To be honest, one of the things that I thought about was Left 4 Dead Part 1. You've got the veteran in Left 4 Dead Part 1. He's fighting, this faceless horde of zombies, and then you have these certain few special infected that you have to deal with. So for most of the game, and in this case, most of the movie, it's just them wasting all of these brainless, junkies. But when these bigger people, the tougher opponents, the ones with better weapons and better stamina and everything come in, it gets really serious and the fights are a lot more difficult, and not everybody survives. It's a solid balance of violence, humor, and serious moments. It never feels over the top or cheesy or campy, like I said. You've got this one great monologue about veterans and the VFW and how it feels like home, and when they go there, it's all about bonding and coming together. And I think that really fit in well with certain parts of the movie where a newer, younger veteran comes in and then this teenage girl comes in and they bond with them because there's this mutual respect. Everybody knows that they can handle themselves. And that's all because they came together at the VFW and they have a shared goal. But no matter how well they band together, it doesn't mean that all the characters are going to survive. And when characters do get killed, it doesn't feel like it was a waste. It doesn't feel stupid. It doesn't feel like it was for shock value. It serves a purpose. And when people do get it, whether it be the good guys or the bad guys, it's done with really, really fantastic practical effects. Everything from small flesh wounds to these really big ones, especially the way that one of the main villains gets killed. It just looks fantastic. You can tell they spent time and they coordinated it. It looks pretty realistic, and I love how dark the movie is. I love all the neon colors, the way it's lit. It's really, really beautifully shot. But make sure you watch this movie at night or in a dark room with the lights off, because there are some scenes that are really, really dark. I watched it in a room with the lights off, and it was still a little difficult to see sometimes. This movie can be unpredictable. It's crazy, it's fun, but there are some moments that you're definitely going to see coming. It might not be till a little bit before they happen, but there are some other moments where they do these setups and you're like, oh yeah, that's going to be such and such later on. So they maybe could have been a little bit more outside the box, but it was not that big a deal. It was definitely much better than most horror these days. So all in all, Fangoria and Joe Begos' VFW is a vulgar, crass, violent, gory fever dream of neon retro nostalgia. If you love grindhouse, if you love exploitation, if you love horror, if you love violent films, this movie is for you. So all that being said, what is my score? Drum roll, please. 8 out of 10.